Hello
Hola a
everyone.
todos. Antes
First
que
of
nada,
all,
quiero, antes de comenzar
before
mi
starting
discurso,
the speech, I want to
quiero
reflect
hacer
on the importance of the
una
enormous
reflexión,
task that CPAC carries out,
sobre la importancia de la tarea enorme
and
que
why
lleva a
this
cabo
event is
CPAC.
so important.
Y por qué es tan importante este evento, por qué es tan
Why it
importante
is so
lo que hace
important what
CPAC alrededor del
CPAC does
mundo
around the world, so that
para
we
que
become
nos
the
concienticemos
important of the cultural battle.
de lo importante de la batalla cultural.
One of the
Una de las
things that I
cosas
usually explain that is the way in
suelo
which we
explicar
look at this task that we have
es la
ahead.
forma en la cual nosotros miramos
They are
esta
basically three ways of
tarea que tenemos por
action.
delante.
There is the root of management, which is what
Básicamente
we are
tres vías de
carrying
acción.
out every day, and that thanks to
Está
this huge
la vía de la
team, to
gestión,
this set of
que es
wonderful
la que día a
professionals,
día
we are
estamos
doing
llevando a
the
cabo,
best government
y que
in
gracias a este
history.
enorme equipo, a este conjunto de profesionales
On the other
maravillosos,
hand, there
estamos
is a
haciendo el mejor
second way
gobierno de
of
la historia.
action that is what has to do with political action, and that here are many of our legislators and that are also carrying
Por
a
otra
huge
parte,
task in
hay una
conjunction
segunda
with
vía de
Guillermo
acción,
Francos,
que es lo que tiene que ver con la acción política,
who is the lord
y
of
que
the
aquí
wrist
están
and without a
muchos de
doubt the
nuestros
boss,
legisladores
who
que también
managed
están
to make
llevando
a
una tarea
game in
enorme en
6
conjunción,
months.
digamos, con Guillermo Francos, que es el señor de la muñeca.
And the other way is the path of cultural battle. This is very important that we have it clear
Sin lugar
because
a
the
dudas, el jefe,
socialists,
que logró
after
hacer
the
un partido
wall
en
of
6 meses.
shame, the wall of terror, the wall of the blood,
Y la otra vía es la vía de la batalla cultural.
which was not only a
La,
failure in the
es muy importante
economic,
que lo
in the
tengamos muy
social
claro,
and the cultural,
porque
but
en los
also
80,
murdered
luego del caído del muro de la
150
vergüenza,
million
el muro del
human
terror,
beings
el
for a
muro de la sangre,
transnachado
que no
of
solo fue un fracaso
imbeciles,
económico, social y
arrogant.
cultural, sino que además asesinó a 150
They
millones de
already
seres
knew that
humanos
I did not
con
like
una trasnochada
lefties,
de
so they are
intelectuales
not
imbéciles actuando.
surprised. However, they
Esa vía
advanced on a
es la que
virgin
nosotros, sigue que
terrain,
nosotros
because
caminamos.
there were basically someone who came up with saying that with the fall of the wall it was the end of
Sin
history.
embargo, avanzaron sobre un terreno virgen
We
porque
retired from the
básicamente
battlefield and
hubo
they
alguien que se le
advanced
ocurrió
without
decir que
any
con la caída del muro
problem.
era el
They
fin de la
got into
historia, nos
universities,
retiramos
the
del campo de
media got
batalla y
into
ellos
the
avanzaron
culture.
sin ningún tipo de problema. Se nos metieron en las
And
universidades, se
since they
metieron en los
had
medios de
no
comunicación,
rival,
se
they
metieron en la
won the
cultura,
cultural battle,
porque
basically
no tenían
because
cuál
we
ganar
did
la batalla
not give
cultural.
it. And in
Básicamente
that
porque nosotros no
sense
la
they
dimos.
organized
Y en ese
politically and were
sentido
very
se organizaron
politically
políticamente y fueron muy
successful.
exitosos políticamente.
In
Digamos,
Argentina
en
we have
Argentina hemos
suffered 4
padecido
Kirchner
4
governments.
gobiernos
We have
kirchneristas,
suffered in the region in
hemos
Chile, for
padecido, digamos, en
example,
la región,
experiments
en
such
Chile,
as
por ejemplo, experimentos
Lagos,
como los de
such as
Lagos, como los
Bachelet,
de
such as
Bachelet,
Boric.
como, digamos, lo de Boric. En
In
Uruguay,
Uruguay Pepe
Pepe Mujica,
Mujica,
Tabaré
Tabaré Vázquez. In what has to do for
lo que tiene
example
que ver,
in
por ejemplo, en
Paraguay,
Paraguay, Lugo,
Lugo.
en
In
Bolivia,
Bolivia
Evo Morales,
Evo
en Brasil,
Morales. In
digamos,
Brazil Lula, Dilma
Dilma Rousseff,
Rousseff. In Peru Castillo. In Colombia Petro. In
digamos,
Venezuela,
en
Maduro's
Perú,
criminal
Castillo, en
murderer
Colombia,
who
Petro,
followed
en
Chavez,
Venezuela, el asesino criminal de Maduro que lo siguió a
the
Chávez,
mentor of all this garbage, Fidel
el
Castro and
mentor de
his
toda esta
henchmen
basura,
that are
digamos,
still
Fidel
in
Castro y sus
power
secuaces que
today,
hoy siguen en
or
el
in
poder.
Spain to have
Entonces,
Zapatero,
o en España,
Sanchez and
digamos,
others,
digamos,
torture that
Zapatero,
the poor
Sánchez y demás
Spaniards have with that,
torturas que tienen los
and they
pobres
managed
españoles
to
con eso.
impose
Entonces,
the agenda of the politically
ellos,
correct.
digamos,
That is
lograron
why I want in this
imponer la agenda de
introduction,
lo
because
políticamente
the
correcto.
important thing is that
Por
they
eso,
were
digamos, quiero
successful in the
esta
cultural, they were
introducción,
successful
porque
politically, but as their
lo
ideas are a
importante es que
fright where
fueron
they are
exitosos en lo cultural,
generating
fueron
misery.
exitosos en lo político, pero como sus ideas son un espanto, a donde van generan miseria.
And
Eso
that
abrió
opened the opportunity
la
that
oportunidad
today in the world, by the
que hoy el
hand of
mundo de la
Donald
mano de Donald
Trump, of
Trump, de
Bukele,
Bukele,
and we here
nosotros
in
aquí en la Argentina,
Argentina, in the
digamos,
world
en el
new
mundo se
winds of
respiren nuevos
freedom are
vientos de libertad.
breathed.
Por lo tanto, estamos frente a una oportunidad histórica para empezar a cambiar el
Therefore,
mundo.
we are
Pero no
facing a
alcanza,
historical
como pasó en los
opportunity
90,
to start
con
changing
esto
the
de la
world, but it does
No
not reach
alcanza
how
con
the 90s
organizarse
with
políticamente.
managing well. It is
Es
not
necesario
enough
también
to
dar una mano
organize
junta.
politically.
Y en
It is
eso
also
CPAC tiene un rol
necessary to
fundamental.
give the
¿Y qué es
cultural
lo que
battle,
va a
and in
ayudar a
that
que nos podamos
CPAC
coordinar
has a
internacionalmente
fundamental role
para que,
and,
digamos,
which
los
is
zurdos no
what
nos
will
entren por
help
ningún
us to
lado?
be coordinated internationally so that left-handed ones do not enter anywhere. And that is why, for these purposes of this introduction, I want to do it with the parasha that is called Vayeshev, because basically at the beginning of the parasha we find the story in which Jacob leaves his father's house and travels to the Sierra de Gerin to find a couple then and build the 12 tribes of the Hebrew people. In the middle of his trip, the parasha tells us that Jacob stops to rest and puts stones only around his head to protect him from the wild beasts of the place. So the question is, shouldn't he have protected his entire body? Why did you protect only your head? This is what I want to be clear. This is what we have to understand, and this is the role of cultural battle. Why only protect your head and not the rest of the body? Because you need to protect your head, you need to protect your ideas. You have to strengthen your ideas. If you strengthen the body but do not strengthen ideas, beasts are going to eat them the same. On the other hand, when you strengthen your head, you are ready and in a position to fight. And this is precisely what CPAC does. Take care of the head, take care of ideas, are the guardians of ideas, and that is why it is so important. And that is the reflection of the parasha, that we have to take care of ideas, because if we do not give the cultural battle, no matter how good we are managing, no matter how good we are politically to be able to arrive. Because if the head fails, if the spirit fails, if those who motivate and mobilize, we will not get anywhere. The complexity of management is enormous. And if you do not have the north defined, if you do not know where you are going, it is like the saying that one, he who does not know what he is looking for, does not understand what he finds. Then we daily find a lot of difficulties and adversities. But what the north always marks is our vision. And that is what we have to feed. We have to feed our vision, because to the extent that we strengthen our vision, that will make us resilient. It will allow us to face left-handed and win it on all the grounds and end once and for all with the garbage of socialism. It's amazing, but it seems that everything was already written so well. What I want, already fully entering the speech, I will try not to have deviations.
Me alegra ver a tantos amigos y hermanos en armas de mil batallas haciéndonos presentes.
Thus they already know that lately I do not have been fulfilling, because 2/3 of the speeches are deviations, which, but I am going to deal with. Today is a day of celebration for us. We had wanted to organize the CPAC here for a long time, and I am glad to see so many friends and brothers in 1,000 battles making us present. I thank everyone for having come closely and far. Especially I want to thank Barry, to Matt and Merle, not only for having done this possible, but also for the welcome quality they gave us in Mar-a-Lago. Thanks to that I could be in Mar-a-Lago. Being together makes us stronger, and we need that strength, because there is still a long way to go in this war that we are, and we will continue to fight in defense of our common ideas, which are the ideas of freedom. In a few days, 1 year will be completed from the moment we assumed the mandate in Argentina. That is, yes, a year has passed, and I want to propose a memory exercise. Try to remember that all the alleged professionals professionals of politics said and also of journalism made. Exactly a year ago, days after our government began, they said that we did not have the political volume to govern, that we were easily infiltrable deputies. The senators, who had no governors, said we did not know about politics, that we did not know the palace, that we were clumsy and that we would not know how to negotiate. Okay. They also said that they were going to take us positions, 8 pochoclos, because we fell first in March, then in April, then in May, then in June. Well, pochoclos' dining rooms must be well fat, because we have not given them the pleasure. In short, they all assumed that we were going to fail politically, and today the same journalists, political scientists of different order that discounted that we were not going to achieve, today they recognize between teeth being surprised with the management of the power that this government has. Not only that, at 12 months we can say that on all battlefronts we have fulfilled our goals, achieving milestones that even exceed what we set out. Do you think it is possible to achieve what we have achieved without policy? Obviously something we do works. Therefore, today I want to reflect with you precisely about this. We are going to talk about politics, we are going to talk about method, we will talk about power. As everyone knows, I am not a politician. In fact, I always despised politicians and how I was not going to hate them. Moreover, how I was not going to hate the state that is a tool of oppression. It reaches to understand some economy and see what they did to Argentina to have plenty of reasons. From a country that had nothing to envy to the main powers of the world, we became a misery factory, all to hold the caste model, an apartheid regime where politicians steal the fruit of their work to the wells of good to distribute it among them, their friends and their clients. Anyway, a story that we are here know well and makes no sense to repeat today. This regime extended for 100 years. In that framework, professional policy was developed. Hundreds and thousands of trained leaders on how to behave, how to negotiate, how to communicate, how to talk to the camera, what can be said and not. And never forget to put your hand in your pocket, which was the fundamental feature. But something curious happened last year. Politics professionals were wrong in everything. They had to throw the manual in the trash because the Argentines chose someone who did everything backwards of what his manual said. In other words, people realized that after 100 years of failure, it made no sense to insist once more only by changing a chef. The recipe had to be changed. That is why they chose us and put as president someone who spent 51 years of his life without having any contact with this colony of lepers that is politics. In fact, I put another manual into practice, with other formulas, perhaps not so professionally or so politically correct. They do not promise prosperity in exchange for anything as indicated by traditional policy, books, nor are the formulas of defeatist liberalism, which believes that with focusing the economy is enough to keep left on the left. My formulas are a bit different. They are the product of intuition and a learning life. They are formulas that were resisted and even ridiculed by the policy professionals who are surprised today. That is why I will share with you what would be our decalogue of how we focus politics. First, it is better to tell an uncomfortable truth than a comfortable lie. In other words, the truth first of all is a moral obligation, but I have also found that it is operationally effective, because there is no measure that works if the previous diagnosis has mud feet. Trying to adjust the reality of a failed model always results in catastrophe for more good intentions that one has. If the exit is unfriendly, better pass the bad drink as soon as possible. The problem of politicians always was that they were afraid of losing their privileges if they told people the truth. Nobody wanted to be peontas. Well, lies at first can walk, but in the long run they have short legs. Look what happened last year, the big lie that was the model of the present state, a house of cards really. He ended up falling on herself, and they were so accustomed to refinancing the current account of the lie with more lies that ended up underestimating people who kicked them. They remember when they're in 2021, in Plaza Holland. Do you remember what I said? I got here to kick them in my ass. They won't tell me that I didn't comply, because deep down this vision of wanting to hide the truth is based on the premise that politicians underestimate people. Neither more nor less. They believe that we are dumb, they treat us as infants. It is truly humiliating. Therefore, we are going to continue telling the truth however uncomfortable it is, and that was what also allowed us to do the things we did, and that is why we are doing the best government in history. Second, notice that after you finish giving this title, I say, all the progress, all the cheap politicaria, all the Rio braids are going to cry. They will say that I am totalitarian. Of course they cry. I don't care. I cry, those evil crying. Therefore, point 2 is, we care about the opinion of politicians on almost all issues. I believe that the best phrase was made by the dearest Daniel Parasini, the Gordo Dan. Here the important thing is to share a diagnosis about the system. The caste model is a scheme of extraction of politicians to the detriment of society. That is, in the caste model the wells have to lose so that politicians win. They are victims of sucking politicians. It is no accident that the more votes have a bill in Congress, worse for society. Remember that in the pandemic they all agreed to lock us. I say, little data. This means that listening to a politician in any matter is automatically turning his back on Argentines. I recommend them as general heuristics. Given any topic, ask yourself, does politics ask for or asks for society? If you ask for only politics, a priori is the wrong way, point. Or as Adorni would say, end. This is also important, and this in fact my team can account for this. Third, you never have to negotiate the ideas to scratch a vote. You never have to negotiate the ideas to scratch a vote. Denying your convictions to attract votes will leave you without convictions and without votes. There are many Argentine political leaders who can witness it. The worst sin that one can commit is to betray oneself. This is sacrifice the most precious thing you have, which is your identity and the value of your word, and in the long run it is in vain, because it does not work. People are not stupid and realize when a politician lies. The same applies to form a political space. For us, the American catch-all party concept does not work. They will not find here, as in other parties, to leaders who say one thing, sitting next to leaders who say otherwise. Add by adding, subtracts, because in politics the whole sometimes ends up being less than the sum of the parties. Well, in the end they asked so much. They all spoke of the incident. The paragraph was dedicated to the incident. In short, in La Libertad Advances we defend in a closed way an unnegotiable set of principles, that the free market produces prosperity for all, that the government has to be limited, that Argentines know better than a bureaucrat how to produce, who to use and with whom to trade, and that the one who makes them pays them. In summary, we defend life, freedom and private property to Rajataba. Anyone who wants to defend these back with us is welcome. Whoever is and has been where he has been, but the ideas are not negotiated. In line with this, I am going to tell you an anecdote. One of the things that I loved the most when I decided to get into this and do it by the hand, not only my sister, but of that giant that is Santiago Caputo. Moment that I threw to my other consultant, who was my consultant before, to say and spend his speech that he was my advisor and that I kicked him rightly in the ass, because I wanted to transform myself into something else, the one that was me. That is why it is rare that he walks, saying that he was my advisor, when he was actually ejected because just what he wanted to do was change me. One of Santiago's great things was that, he said, no, you don't have to change. You have to go as one and you have to go straight ahead and so with the truth and not mutate in something else to look like something else, an infinite trap. And that became part of the decision-making mechanism. Because in general, politicians, how they make decisions, take the surveys, see what people like and tell people what they want to listen, and we don't really work that way. Because that mechanism is inconsistent, because when you add each of those parts, the aggregate result is not consistent. That is, no, it gives an incoherent result. So, in that criterion we do look surveys to see the status of situation, how things are, but we have a north and then it is what we need to explain to society to be able to go to that world that we plan, which we consider that it is better, and depending on that, this is how we do this construction. And many times, that is not free, that has costs. That is, it is not free of costs. That is, doing the right thing, when for more than 100 years they contaminated people with stupidities, it is not easy. And when one does that implies costs, and those costs are paid in image terms. Then one day I was talking to a journalist, I think it was, I don't know if it was with Antonio Laje or with Gabriel Anello, two great journalists, two types that are sincere, who do not trap or operate, or anything like that. And he told me, the truth is that all politicians end with a bad image. So there, one of the things that I realized is that the truth is that if making decisions implies costs, one will end up ruining the image. Then the image, this is very internalized inside the iron triangle, and that we transmit it to the team, and that is, okay, if we are going to end with bad image anyway, at least we do the things that are fine. And that led us to give fights that seemed impossible, where public opinion was totally on the other side. And that was how we were planted, the cheap demagoguery of the degenerates of prosecutors via retirement to break our fiscal balance. They did the same with the universities. And the country risk that had been falling from 3,000 basic points around 1100, the degenerates of prosecutors managed to make it up to 1700. However, we decided to do what we had to do, and luckily there were also people who accompanied us and who also allowed us defend the vetoes. And we said we are going to do what to do, regardless of how the media operates, regardless of how politicians want to dirty, regardless of how they wanted to sabotage our program. And from that, to bank us the political cost of doing what it was appropriate to do, the country risk fell to 750 basic points. If you take the third quarter of the year, the economy expanded to 3.4%, which is equivalent to an expansion of the 14% annual order. Or if you want to take it since the floor was touched in April, the growth rate of Argentina comes at a rate of 10% annual. Moreover, the inflation that was 54% monthly down to 1 to 2. The level of activity today is above the one in December. If you set the economy when you take the evolution of GDP, yes, it will fall, but that fall will be below the statistical drag that the previous government left us from the 2 to 8. So, what we are testing is that we have not only avoided hyperinflation, but we also did it without being lost at the level of activity between tips. With the salaries measured in dollars going from $300 to $1,100 and having given social containment and having exterminated insecurity. What is it worth doing things right? And when all the manuals said that our image was going to be destroyed, we have a better image than when we arrived. We are the government that the first year has the best image level, the best level of confidence to the consumer, the best level of confidence in the government, after having made the greatest adjustment the history of humanity. Let classic politicians come and talk. Therefore, if we did not think to negotiate before, now that the results accompany less. Fourth point, and this is also very important, especially this should be learned by Copitan liberals, onanism champions. I'm elegant today, huh? Unlike the economy, politics is a zero-sum game. This means that the spaces of power that we do not occupy are occupied by the adversary. That is, the left occupies them. That is why we must be determined and practical. We must not have disgusting to exercise power. We must use the weapons of the enemy. Politically speaking, we cannot continue using muskets in the era of drones. In the cultural battle they established the rules, and we have not only to live up to it, we have to overcome them. This is very important. Sometimes I wonder, I say, when I look at the comments of the Copitan liberals, the liberated, the question is, would they feel better with leftist governments? Would they be better with Kirchnerism? Well, a moron said it. He said it was the same as Massa. No, but hey, it seems that we have in the fauna some that envy, hatred, resentment put a haven in their heads, but of another material, that is, of fecal matter. Fifth, the only way to combat the evil organized is with the organized good. Here there is a phrase that I posted it a few days ago on Instagram, which used to repeat Ludwig von Mises, which is from Virgil and says that, you don't have to give in to evil, you have to fight it more strongly. That is, we do not give in to evil, we do not give in to socialism, we must fight it more strongly and finish killing them in the ass. I warn you that this is a political discussion, because otherwise the turnip that I believe I am assaulting my teacher is not missing now. Because I say they saw that they are very. The poor Dan accuse him and compare it with terrorists. That is, see, this is very interesting. See the miserability and the curse and the liars that are the media. They give, in a phrase that says recurrently, I publicly commit here that I will go to Dan's streaming. I'm not going to streamings, but Mass won a place in my heart. See how interesting, the mediocrity and the way in which the media and how funny are. The fat Dan, the fat monster, basically what did he say? We are the president's armed arm, and we have the most powerful weapon that was created in the history of humanity, and took out his cell phone. They look at the miserability of the media, which grabbed the phrase, cut it, removed the latter, which was the explicit reference to the cell phone, and began to talk about the armed arm and began to compare us with the sons of Remilter fucking that during the end of the 60s, the beginning of the 70s killed people. And a lot of journalists scandalizing that he would have armed arm when he was talking about a cell phone. So, if it were only, overly, oh, sorry, I was wrong. Well, then, they truly see intellectual dishonesty, and they do that many. Because, Well, if they are going to make the list, they are a lot, but hey. The other day Antintrelli he gave them almost, he decorated them. So there they have a few of those who usually do these traps of cutting phrases and attacking with an incomplete phrase, which is of enormous intellectual dishonesty. But only journalists do not do it, so do many professionals, who are also part of the caste and that work precisely for the corrupt. Thus, only the re-over microphones are a part of the gear, because there are also the prebendary entrepreneurs, there are corrupt politicians, but there are also these criminal professionals who also play in favor of some sinister interest. So, how? And well, I'm talking about that just. So nothing. Notice that this is not against my mentor, because this is political. This is not philosophy, or thought, or anything. Politics. This is about power. And if we don't have it, shit left-handed ones have it. In this sense, because the liberals are not heard, many have fallen into the trap of not organizing. It was intended to combat an oiled exercise with an anarchic aggregate of freethinkers. They believed that was to be liberals. The only thing that was achieved with that is endless decent defeats, so that coffee liberals have a quiet conscience. But mainly it cost us 100 years of abuse to individual freedoms. We can never give ourselves the luxury of making that mistake. I have already said that I came to wake up lions. Precisely, the lions hunt in groups. It is the sheep that run each on their side when they are attacked. That is why in La Libertad, the one who gets out goes home. Or as I said on other occasions, Rome does not pay traitors. We have to be like a flaw of Oblite or a Roman legion. Caesar Legion 13. Profe, where is the teacher? I took you, I learned, did you see? I learned. That is imposed on larger armies precisely because no one breaks the formation, or say, the history of the Maccabees. Not good. This interruptions make the text return and do not make the example of the Maccabees. The forces in battle do not depend on the number of soldiers but on the forces that come from heaven. 6th. When the adversary is strong, the only way to defeat him is with a force majeure. This is not only a principle of politics, but also of physics. You have to be inclement and never give up a centimeter. You cannot lift the white flag in front of the left. Trying to appease it is not an option. We have to be aware that they do not act from good faith, but from a criminal ambition for power. They prefer that the country collapses before seeing that it thrives without them. They prefer to reign in hell than to serve in heaven, and if it has to transform the sky into hell to stay in power, they will do it. That is why there is no place for those who claim consensus, forms and good manners. The forms are means. They are evaluated according to their effectiveness to achieve certain purposes. And today undergoing the demand for forms is to lift a white flag in front of an inclement enemy. The fire fights with fire, and if it accuses us of violent ones that we are the reaction to 100 years of abuse. And if I put it in terms of Ballardist manual, hard and pure Ballardism, I say those mediocre, warm that cry out for forms. It seems that they were very opposed to Kirchnerism, but they always lost. Therefore, less words and more results. We have results, and you don't like forms? But back, do you think that if someone comes and puts a gun in their heads they will say, no? Well, look, this is not done. When they finished the first sentence they stayed with a hole in the head. Then that's so strong defense of forms, when you on the other side have Neanderthals. With forgiveness of the Neanderthals, do not fight that way. If you go with good formitas, what will happen? They will pass it on. We are not going to let ourselves pass through the Neanderthals. 7th. When the adversary sings a rebound, we sing I want it is worth 4. Never go back, always accelerate and walk towards the fire. The best defense is always a good attack. When we are defending ourselves, we lose the initiative, we lose agility, and we are accepting the terms of dishonest discussion of the enemy, but we are not the ones who have to give explanations to them how we are going to be. If those responsible for that disaster and have sunk the country in the 6th subsoil, they are precisely they. In addition, if we yield, they will perceive it as a sign of weakness. We have quickly realized that its strategy is based on threat and intimidation. That is why we received a blow. You have to climb the bed and respond with 3. I am also going to do another football metaphor. If you have a team and hang from the crossbar, the 11 will never win. Winning also involves taking risks. Winning involves taking risks. So, we cannot hang ourselves from the crossbar, because if we do that we will lose safe. That is, you have to go out and you have to look and you have to win the game. Yes. Can we eat any goal? Yeah, that can happen, but they are clear that we have the best ideas and we will pass them on. So go ahead and attack that we won. 8th, giving the cultural battle from power is not only recommended, but it is an obligation. That already occupies all the places of influence, but we also begin to win some spaces. That is why we must take advantage of them, because ideas unfortunately do not win by their own merit, they must be actively promoted. The left is the proof that the most terrible ideas can succeed culturally if they have a good marketing. Imagine how much we have to win that we have ideas that do work. That is why we spend time and effort not only to solve the economic catastrophe that left us, we will also make sure that the ideas that ruin do not play alone in the public sand. Therefore, we value spaces like CPAC, because it is the place to come and continue feeding among us to grow ideas and to say, an experience of how to face this enemy so well organized. 9th, the only way to fight socialism is from the right, the extreme center. Its positions and its tools are always functional to the criminal left. That is, all those warm who want to go through the middle, all they do is give ground to the left, and on the left you cannot give a millimeter. We are skeptical of consensus, we are skeptical of dialogue, because we are not interested in continuing with the famous policy consensus that are nothing more than pacts to continue living forever from the taxpayer. We have come to break all those badly called consensus. And I say badly called because they were internal agreements between the political class, without consulting the citizen, who is the one who pays the party. Because let's never forget that what they call consensus is the consensus among them, among those who want to keep the status quo of privileges for politicians. And because there can also be consensus between good and evil, there can be no consensus between good and evil, there can be no consensus between moral and immoral. This issue, I remember in my defense against a thoughtful centrism, I put it, about this stupidity of going through the center, as if it were a kind that in the middle it is optimal. So, following these fools of the thought-centrism, I proposed 2 cases. We agree that respecting life is fine, we agree that the murder is wrong. Well, then, according to the fools of the thought-centrism, there is something optimal called torture, and that is also an aberration. Therefore, when one puts moral values on the table, it is clear what is right, it is clear what is wrong, and with evil it does not transa. Because holding all that assembly as apparently innocent accomplices are the center's parties. They are the controlled opposition on the left, always willing to make the guarantors of their reforms. They are the ones who legitimize it from their position of conciliation and moderation. They are the ones who present themselves as the just medium among the dangerous extremes. But they are always the first to support abortion, radical environmentalism, radical feminism, and all the agendas of globalist socialism. They are the ones who accuse us of alleged intolerance, while coexist and even share agendas claiming the murderous communist dictatorship, for example that of Castro or the Maduro dictator. Or they are, for example, those who perhaps seeking to congratulate Kirchnerism, adopted and promoted their historical misrepresentations, above all, are members of the serial impoverishment that ruined this country. A little for own ideas and another for not having the courage to face the most recalcitrant left. They are the ones who ask to better manage a suffocating state instead of dismantling it, to continue living of the wealth of others. They are obsessed with forms and tolerance, because raising voice is for them worse than the systematic violation of our fundamental rights. And I will repeat it because they have me rotten, if not the balls on the floor. They are obsessed with forms and tolerance because raising voice is for them worse than the systematic violation of our fundamental rights. And they are the same as covered in the supposed moderation have blocked many of our reforms, with Kirchnerism. That is, these moderates are the same ones that enabled atrocities that Kirchnerism did. What I mean by this is that beyond aesthetic issues and superficial aspects in the long run the extreme center manifests itself as what it is, functional to the criminal left. Finally, and 10th point of all this, the last and most important of all, we defend a fair and noble cause, much bigger than each of us. People are mere instruments in this cause and we have to be willing to give life for it. I speak neither more nor less than the historical idea of the West, an intergenerational cause, a thread that runs millennia, the cause of the Athenian philosophers who with Alexander the Great rode Egypt and Asia, that the Romans consolidated in the first multi-continental empire, which was reborn from the barbaric invasions in the abbeys and the court Arabs and reconquered Spain, which crossed the ocean and colonized America, the same cause that made us citizens and freed us from the yoke of the tyrant, and the cause that discovered the scientific method, which industrialized planet Earth, and that with the capitalism of free business brought from misery billions of human beings brought from misery, the same cause that led us to outer space, to the moon, and will make the human species an interplanetary civilization. In short, I speak of the great civilizational deed that is the West, a cause of honor, courage, merit, and relentless search for truth. That is our cause. That is the historical line that we come to restore. So when I say that the force of heaven accompanies us, it is not a superstition. It is about historical truth, to recognize and stay on the path of good. Defending a cause is a value too transcendent for the understanding of the average politician. They are accustomed to defending only their material interest, their immediate benefit. They do not have a notion of the true or a notion of the good. If we understand the deep value of what we fight for, if we understand the size of the cause we defend, we also understand something else. To live up to what the cause demands, we need to leave our personal aspirations aside. There is no place for personal ambitions. There is no place for meanness. There is no place for the self. If you want to think about yourself, go home. What is at stake is too great for those who have not tried their faith. These are the 10 political slogans that I wanted to leave today, because as Lenin said, without revolutionary theory there can be no revolutionary movement. I fervently believe that it is not only a political action decalogue for Argentines, but also for all those who share our ideas in the rest of the world. To end, I would like to talk a little about the historical moment in which we are. Today we are faced with a change of time where the global privileged caste system is collapsing. Woke soul disease is increasingly resistance, as the general population becomes aware of the intentions behind its alleged humanitarian mask. Despite having redoubled their totalitarian efforts of censorship and misinformation, all its victories are Pyrrhic. Each triumph of wokeism has been a consequence of the imposition, and has fed the fair resentment of a society that has said enough, the woke is enough. That society is currently in search of representativeness. He needs leaders who mark the way, and it is we who must take the baton. We cannot leave our destiny in the hands of socialism, or the extreme warm and accomplice center. If such responsibility has touched us, we must take charge. And for that we must be together, establishing cooperation channels throughout the world. We could call ourselves a right-wing international, that is, a network of mutual assistance, composed of all those interested in spreading the ideas of freedom around the world. Returning to the idea that the evil organized is expired through the organization of the good ones, we must draw strong ties among our countries. Faced with the abuses of socialism, we must answer all together and with conviction. Because they are organized, go out outside and they will see how well orchestrated. They have everything. It is our moral duty to defend the legacy of our Western civilization, and we must face it with greatness. Today the world is facing a change of time. I think there are few to deny it at this point. We, all of us here, play an important role in that time change. Perhaps in a way that 10 years ago neither here imagined. Tell me to me. Especially who we are Argentines, we are starring in a true revolution. We are being avant-garde in how politics is done, how it is governed, how the economy of a country is handled. In fact, we have the best minister of economy in the world. Thanks Toto. And here I address all of you, the officials, leaders and militants of freedom advances, who are here today. Let's stop a second to weigh what we are doing. One by one, we are solving problems that in Argentina were under the carpet for decades, even problems that the free world is very encouraged to address, such as the issue of fiscal deficit. Only 5 countries in the world are up on the financial line, and Argentina is one of them. But in addition, I want to thank each of you, each of the officials. Because none of this could be possible if it were not for the effort they make every day, each from their place. So thanks to all of you, because without you there would be no better government in history. On the other hand, they say that politics is the art of the possible. We are demonstrating every day that, in reality, politics is the art of making the impossible possible. And we will continue to do it, because they said it was impossible to adjust public spending at a point on GDP. Well, we adjust 15 in a year. Well, we are making the impossible possible, because they said it was impossible to end insecurity and pickets. And what that giant I have from Minister of Security, Dr. Bullrich, is doing it. And so I could continue announcing each of the wonders that each of the ministers does. But I cannot be spoiling everything that I will be talking about on 10. So, please, I keep a little. Therefore, I have pride of what we are doing. I have faith on the course. Keep working tirelessly and militating with your forehead high, because, as the Holy Scriptures say, they attack us full of insolence and impiety to exterminate us, our women, our children, and to seize our spoils. We, instead, fight for our life and our customs. Heaven will crush them in front of us. They are not afraid of us. The world has been immersed in a deep darkness and shouts to be illuminated. And we can and we must throw that light. Argentina can be a lighthouse for the world, a lighthouse of headlights. We can be an example for a West who desperately need to meet the ideas of freedom. Therefore, that God bless the Argentines, that the strength of heaven accompanies us, and long live freedom, damn it. Long live freedom, damn it. Long live freedom, damn it. Thank you very much to everyone. Thank you, because without you this would be impossible.